to do is keep your hands on the handlebars, keep them feet moving up and down, and, my God, it moves. Come on, Nick. Big, it's Friday night. Mysterious, sinister Friday night. And everywhere, the mysterious, sinister doings are happening as they always do. My God, I sometimes shudder to think what's going on at the time when I'm doing this show. Out there in certain byways, certain alleys, and back of certain McDonald hamburger joints in Jersey's. Great, vast greensward. This is action night. This is the night when the hopes of man rise higher and higher because the weekend has finally arrived. And, of course, man always feels that this weekend is going to be the one that's going to make the final statement. It's going to go all the way. It's only by Friday afternoon that he realizes that once again, he's going to have to start rebuilding again. Man's hopes go up and down. Thusly. It'll be all right, Lee. Just be calm. It's okay. It's working. Yeah, I knew you. You're on top, of course. We'd like to give a salute here tonight. Speaking of hanky-panky, before we get underway. Gee, this would make a fantastic half-hour, quickie, one-act drama in the Armpit Theater, someplace over a little joint that sells pizzas down on 4th Street in the Village. With English actors, by the way. You could get Dick Bogard to play the father, Margaret Leighton to play the mother, and a particularly evil midget to play the 3-year-old son. May I please have a little of my salute to England, where stuff gets even more grotesque than you ever would have dreamed in your wildest moments? And so tonight we salute the tiny little family in South Benfleet, England. We read this note direct from the Associated Press wire. By God, there'll always be in England. The country that spawned Jack the Ripper. Tom Smith locked his wife up in an antique chastity belt for their 26th birthday. Yes, he gave her a chastity belt on her 26th birthday, and then their 3-year-old son, Mark, threw away the key. How about that for symbolism, my God? Freud couldn't have done any better. Smith attacked the medieval cast iron with a saw and broke 2 blades. He was unable to bust the thing open. Father then bundled Mother into the car and drove her to the firehouse. Chortling firemen freed Mrs. Smith with their wire cutters. Well, when Tom presented me with it, I thought it was just what I'd always wanted, she said. It was a joke, but it wasn't so funny afterwards. And we'd like to salute Mark tonight, who performed a very symbolic act. It had to be Mark, 3 years old, who threw away the key to the chastity belt. It has all the meanings. All the anybody, you know, if a playwright ever wrote a thing like that, he'd get laughed right out of the theater. They'd say, "Oh, come on, that's too pat, please." Punta Gorda, Florida. Cass Bugaresta, civil deputy for the Charlotte County Sheriff's Department, had to make new subpoenas because a goat had eaten the original ones. As Bugaresta stepped into the house to serve, he just walked into his house to serve 2 subpoenas on the residence. He was bitten on the leg by the pet goat. With the animal clinging to his leg, he frantically waved the legal papers at the goat. Get off there, will you, goat? The goat let go of his leg and then took a swipe at the subpoenas, at which point he ate them up so fast that there wasn't enough left to serve. End of the Travis McGee mystery for tonight. By the way, we'll give you I'll give anybody out there a brass figurine with bronze oak leaf palm. If you can tell me who Travis McGee is, you know, Nick? And what is the name of the place where he lives? What's the name of his abode? Not the town he lives in. What's the name of the abode? You don't know who Travis McGee is? And you don't know the name of the place he lives? Then you don't know nothing about Travis McGee. Nothing, friend. Nothing. For those of you who would, kind of miss the way things are going, sometimes I don't know which way it's going to go. Hey, do you have my Beethoven up in there? It is part of our duties here, as you know, as a traveling working artist walking through the world of our time. Just call me Candide, if you don't mind. Luigi Candide. Used to be a triggerman for the Mafia. By the way, when is Plimpton going to play? George Plimpton works 2 weeks with the Mafia as a triggerman, as a gunzel, and does a fantastic NBC special on the exciting life of a Mafia gunzel. It would be kind of exciting, wouldn't it? But I would like to, I'm holding this up for you, Nick. You're an ex-student. You might be pleased to know that the ad world has finally moved into areas where it never lived before. And as part of our work here, we'd like to file this with our vast file of trivia, which is going into our time capsule, so that 5,000 years from now, when they dig it up, they'll know what life was really like. The current issue of New York Magazine features an ad that I think is a totally new breakthrough. It shows a very serious-looking guy sitting there, and he's sitting in what looks like a bunch of theater seats. And he's got a pencil in his mouth, you know. You're looking at him, and he's caught in a serious moment, see? He's not looking at the camera, Nick. Listen carefully. You got to picture the scene. He's looking off into the middle distance, and he's holding his pencil in his mouth. You know the kind you hold once in a while. You say, I wonder what direction the world will take next. And he's looking very thoughtful, and he's got a very now mustache, and his hair is combed boyishly over his forehead, and he's looking very serious. And what do you think it is? See him there? Do you think this is an ad for an insurance company? Do you think it is an ad for a brokerage house? Not at all. Get ready with my Beethoven. It is an ad for... Thank you, Nick. Well, that's the way the best Beethoven begins, with the sound of a record scratch in this day and age. It adds a little shoddiness to our production, which I kind of like. Yeah, if you wonder what this is, we are tonight saluting the ad world everywhere. It is an ad for a school teacher. Yes, and above him, you see his name printed in sort of mod hip letters. And I will change the name to protect the guilty. Kluberman. And here's the copy. If you were to ask Irving Kluberman what he was doing all alone in the classroom after all the students had left, he'd probably say modestly, thinking. Yes, Irving Kluberman teaches at the Warren G. Harding School because he likes to think. He couldn't stand using last year's notes for this year's class. He has to find new ways every day to communicate with adolescent girls because adolescent girls are different every day. Yes, Kluberman has to get a girl thinking about what to expect of herself in the way of leadership and involvement, and what her particular talents are, and how she intends to develop them, and what is not only to be understood, but to understand. Perceiving, analyzing, and communicating are what grown people have to do. Growing people have to learn how. Kluberman teaches communications at Warren G. Harding because he wants to. I like that. I imagine all the kids leaving Kluberman's class every day asking for his autograph. I don't know what you mean by that. He pointed at me. Wait just a minute. We're getting a note here. Yes, dear. No, I know. What's that got to do with the price of eggs in Pittsburgh, honey? Yes. Yes, I tell you. That's true. I can see changes coming now, eventually, of course. That's just the breakthrough now. And it's got to come. It happened in sports, you know, Nick. Not too long ago, you know, it used to be that the Yankees would play another team, but then it was Mickey Mantle with the New York Yankees take on the Detroit Tigers starting Al Kaline. And that was a whole new ball game at that point. People would walk out of Shea Stadium when Namath wasn't playing that day. I've seen them do it. Oh, they put in understudies all the time, you know. And that's a whole new thing. And I can just see Harvard. Give me a little more of that Beethoven, will you please? I can see an ad for Harvard, see? I can just see it
Harvard University presents with great pleasure Dr. Leopold L. Steinmetz. Dr. Steinmetz, realizing that man in his ever-changing daily life, in his constantly challenging role dealing with the universe, recognizes that basic physics is a thing that modern man uses as a tool to vault to the heavens, to vault to the moon. Dr. Steinmetz realizes that today's pliable young minds must be dealt with, communicated with. And what about the Harvard student of tomorrow? He must march forward, bearing the feeling, the knowledge, the understanding that life is but for the devouring. Yes, Steinmetz teaches at Harvard because it's there.
This guy teaches communicating. You know, I've been in the business of communicating almost all my life as a professional, and I still don't know how you can teach communication. Oh, I see another. You know, there's all these amorphous courses now that are taken over where there's no way to flunk a guy, you know, in anything like communication. Would you please give me a little more of that Beethoven? I can see the future. This going further out. I can just see it now.
Dr. Florence L. Peabody has accepted the challenge at Yale. Dr. Peabody teaches the young minds, the growing young, fertile minds of the young undergraduates at Yale. Dr. Peabody teaches love. Yes, in the full understanding that today's modern world, man must learn how to love. He must understand the meaning, the basis, the ramifications, and the future of love. Dr. Peabody has accepted the challenge and now teaches the students at Yale love. Yes, Dr. Florence L. Peabody teaches love at Yale because, well, just because.
Yeah, thank you. This is WOR New York. May I make a station break here? And while we're doing this, hello, test. Hello, test. Let's see. We have a commercial here. I'm looking. Oh, yeah, hello. You saver types. You guys who save money. We have a note here from the Providence Savings Bank in New Jersey. Jersey City, that is, of course. That's Jersey. The oldest savings bank in New Jersey, and they got good news and some bad news for you. And I've gotten some from my bank from time to time. First, the good news. If you have a regular passbook savings account with Provident, you'll be getting your 5% a year dividend, the highest allowed by law, credit to your account on the last day of this month and every month, 12 times a year. And now here's the bad news. If you're not a Provident Savings Bank depositor, you may have an account that pays you less interest and makes you wait for it until the semi-annual or quarterly period. So it makes sense. Get with the Provident good news, friends. Provident Savings Bank wants your savings, whether personal or business, to earn the most in dividends. And if you'd like to find out about their fast-growing Provident Savings Account Bank by Mail kit, you can get it free. You just write Provident in care of, it says name of personality. Is that me? Yes, I guess so. Care Provident. No, name of me there, Gene. That's me. Just write to me. WOR, New York, 10018. Or you can phone them right now, MU26800, and ask them about their bank by mail kit. And they're a member of the FDIC. That's nice. Do you have your Walden thing? We'd already done the station break. You were busy at the time. Yes, I did. You're telling me. Yes. Would you please give me my Walden music? It's commercial here. Yeah, this is from a new album. Give me some of my Henry David Thoreau words here. Yes, it's the only road that's really free, walking down the old Marlboro Road. For you and you and you and you and me, far away from the city pressures. And all these great words by Henry David Thoreau are set to rock by the New Nature Group. And the album is called Walden. And it's available at all King Carroll record shops at sale price of $2.98. And if you can't come, write. You can write them at King Carroll, 111 West 42nd Street, New York City. Free mailing anywhere in the U.S. That's $2.98.
And they'll ship immediately. That's King Carroll, 111 West 42 Street, New York City. Henry David Thoreau set the music on Walden. Just the kind of stuff that sounds good rolling out over Walden Pond in the quietness of Henry David Thoreau's contemplation of his navel. Thank you, Nick. Walden. All right. Gee, things are... You're really advertising some wild stuff these days. We got the Walden. We also have here our good old birds. For those of you who haven't... Hey, listen, they have two styles of these birds now. You seen the new one? You saw the old one I brought up here. Well, that's the one with that looks like the Da Vinci drawings. It's a kind of a pretty one. It's orange and yellow and brown, just the way the Da Vinci drawings were. Well, the new one is a dove. It's white with gold trim. It's a peace dove type. So if you have if you have one of these neighbors that walks around with shotguns, keeps hollering around about bad people, you ought to go and blow them up. Well, you wind up your peace dove, and you fly it over his backyard. But you can get them now white. That's kind of weird. And it has a little crank out of the back, and you wind it up, and she'll fly maybe 300 or 400 feet. And it's just like a real bird. If you haven't seen any of these things, these are really wild. And they're really something else. And the way you order them is you simply send a check or money order, $3.98, to Flying Bird. Now make sure you say which one you want. Regular bird, spelled B-U-R-D, or dove. Dove, spelled D-U-E. No, dove. I'm sorry, dove. You know how to spell dove, for crying out loud. Specify white dove or yellow bird. And their 16-inch wingspan, it comes packed in a box. You just pop it out and you put it together in about 8.5 seconds. And it comes with a special tool for replacing the extra set of rubber bands which come with it. Nothing is worse than a peace dove with a busted rubber band. That's symbolic. Flying Birds, Department S. Send your check to Flying Birds, Department S, Post Office Box 199, Grand Central Station, New York, New York. And don't make the check out to me, make it out to Flying Bird, you dildoc. Hey, speaking of dildocs, we've been getting a lot of questions lately about our TV show, which was on PBS this past season. And, people wondering about the whole story. And here's the story at this point. The show got really a good reaction across the country, so PBS is now repeating it. The show will be repeated late this spring. So in case you missed some of it, you'll be able to pick it up. It'll be on the network, regular, I guess at the regular time. Do you know, Lee? They didn't say. They wrote me a note and said they're repeating the PBS Gene Shepard's America show on the network late this spring, and it'll be seen all summer on television. And then we're preparing a new series for the coming season. So we're working on a new season, which is tentatively entitled Great Unsung American Heroes. Now, it's not nothing to do with great heroes of the past or anything like that. For example, one of our series shows right now, maybe I shouldn't say. What do you advise, Lee? You're my advisor. No, I better not. Well, I'll give you a clue. No, I better not, because immediately somebody's going to run over at NBC and go out and try to do it. So I'll stick with it. And that goes on next season in full color, the whole shtick, It's very funny what's happening to television, for those of you who don't know much about the business. But the show that I did, which was a regular 13-week series, it was not canceled at any point. In other words, we contracted to do 13 shows, and that's what we did. And they were put on the network and seen all across the country. Well, there's been some curious reactions. in the business world. For example, we received an offer to do those shows I guess it's what they call, I suppose it's a variation of cable television. But did you know that there's a whole new setup now where cable television is going to be cabled into motels around the country just for their... In other words, you can see great shows in motels which you can't see anywhere else. In other words, it won't be available to other cable TV series, where other services. And so some outfit took a poll around the country and found out that our show, believe it or not, was popular in motels. Now, how do you figure that one?
Did my show have a motel quality to it? And so now they want to put it on closed-circuit television in motels around the country, color, the whole bit. And so that's how specialized show business is getting. I mean, it's really getting very special. It used to be that guys used to say, I'm doing a kid show. Or, I'm doing a housewife show. Or I'm doing an adult show. No longer now. You say, well, I'm doing a children motel show for for a special crowd. It's a very special scene. Everything, in other words, our whole society is getting splintered up into little tiny splinters to where guys who live in motels will see a whole different series of television shows than, say, guys who don't live in motels and who spend their time sitting on their front porch. So, I don't know. You know what? We'd like to, a great moment happened here today. We'd like to point it out here for those of you. It's a place that I one time myself had a sweaty evening in, and we would like to. So, do you have me? Give me some. No Beethoven. No, Beethoven's too good for this. What do you got? Yeah, that's pretty good. It's Chicago. It's a Chicago story, so I think that would fit. Chicago, that toddling town, Chicago. You know the rest of the lyrics? I know some lyrics on that would blister your ears. The town where a man once danced with his very own wife, which I always thought was a great lyric. It says more than... Yeah, that's right. Chicago, that toddling town. Well, more stuff happens in Chicago per square inch than any other city I know of in the world. It's really a going city. And yet a great thing happened today in Chicago. For those of you who are students of American culture, you didn't hear this on Cronkite's News. But a big breakthrough happened today, and we'd like to report it as part of our continuing series, History as it happens now, today in America, please. Chicago. It was cold outside Chicago today, 5 degrees Fahrenheit. But some who liked it hot jammed a State Street theater to see Miss Nude America take it all off and court arrest by the fuzz. Valerie Kraft, who had won her title at a nudist resort in Roseland, Indiana last summer, exposed her total naked charms at the Rialto Burlesque Theater in a bid for jail and glory in a court action to beat the city's anti-nude ordinances. But Miss Kraft forgot the ingenuity of municipal minds. She was not put in a slam. Despite sitting on the stage as she worked, right on stage, was an iron-faced vice detective who sat back of her as she did her thing, with the band going and the drums going off. And he wrinkled his nose when she trailed a long black feather over her bareness. Instead, Chief Francis Murphy of the city's Fire Protection Bureau stepped in and closed the Rialto for failing to provide adequate firefighting equipment to stop a blaze. What a letdown. But not before news photographers and the paying customers, $3 a head, warmed their eyes at the sight of Valerie peeling off and flaunting all of her charms as the stage lights blushed to crimson. We quote her, "I think I'm lucky to be the girl who's gotten the chance to open up Chicago to nude dancing," she said before her performance. But with the Rialto closed, Valerie is now looking for other audiences to conquer and other spots to put the slam in. Thank you. That's Chicago. Now, do you know anything about the Rialto? Never heard of it, huh? I might add, I have been in the Rialto. And it's funny that the Rialto, just hear the name Rialto, makes me sweat inside. Because I'm going to tell you something what happened one time in a Rialto. I shouldn't be telling you this because there are probably kids up, but when I was about 15, maybe 16, let's put it this way, I was a big 15. After all, I was playing tackle at the time. Me and a couple other guys, including Flick, who was even bigger than me, and Bolis Rakowski, who was bigger than both of us. Bolis Rakowski sounds exactly the way his name describes him. You can imagine it, the age of 16. He was wearing a 22.5 neck. And, oh, yes. Indeed. Bolis's neck began at his ears and tapered out from that point. And he had no shoulders at all. His neck just went down and just tapered out right under his ears. It just started to move out.
And by the time it got to the place where you put his collar on, it was 22 and a half. And a half an inch below that, it was all the way out to 48. Bolis was a bowling ball with feet. And so me and Bolis and Flick, one sweaty Saturday afternoon, we're down in a basement. Now, I'll tell you about the Rialto. The reason I brought this out, I read this. I said, oh, by God, they're still busting up at the Rialto. Well, I have received many letters from people from time to time asking if I have ever felt the cold hand of the law on my shoulder. I have to say yes. I have to say yes. Never told this story. And if it ever gets back to certain places in my hometown, I'm liable to be dead. So keep it to yourself. But I'm going to tell you exactly what happened on a fantastic Saturday. Just like tomorrow's Saturday, right? There's going to be kids get in trouble tomorrow. They don't know it yet tonight. But tomorrow, at this time, you are liable to be sweating bullets. That's right. A lot of kids listening to me right now do not realize what lies in store for them. None of us do, actually. That's one of the great things about life. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow morning. Have you ever had the feeling that life itself is like a great, big, unbelievable, fantastic, never-ending, totally varied show that you just don't know any second? I mean, it just goes on. And you keep hearing these groovy things that you just would never have imagined 2 minutes before. Like I was just told that the Bell Company, the phone company, is building a building here not more than a block away from where the studios are. And it's supposed to be the only hydrogen bomb-proof building in all of New York. Now, isn't that a comforting thought? It's kind of nice to know when all the people are blown up and the buildings are gone and there's nothing but a big hole in the ground, the telephone company will still be standing there ready to take calls. Now, which seems to me one of life's little ironies. There won't be nobody to call, and but that building's going to stand there. The switchboards are going to be popping, and everything's ready. So I would not have anticipated that until I heard that. It just suddenly hit me that this is kind of a great thing to know. So you never realize what's going to happen to you tomorrow morning. You have no idea. If you think you know what's going to happen to you tomorrow morning at 10, you're just it's a fool's paradise. You're whistling in the dark. You don't know. No way to know. And so one day, me and Flick and Bolis Rakowski were sitting in Bolis's basement. Now, a lot of bad stuff, a lot of evil things are contrived in guys' minds in basements. I think rooms change your whole view of life. I mean, you just can't imagine planning a gigantic heist in your grandmother's sun parlor. With the sun coming in and the fern plants growing around you. Do you agree with that, Nick? That your environment plays a role on what you're going to do? So one night, and I think boys, I don't know about girls in this case, but do girls ever go through the sweaty pinochle playing stage? Did you ever go through that stage when you were about 14 playing cards with your friends? Frantic card games? You did. Good. Fine. Everybody does that then. Okay, we'll accept that. But we got into the pinochle kick, and we played three-handed pinochle. Me and Bolis and Flick every night would get around. Yeah, we'd get around this table down the basement. We were about 15, see, and we would play pinochle, and we played double-deck pinochle, with two decks, and we had these two old decks of cards that were so old and so worn that together the two decks of cards, when we were ready to deal them out, was about the size of the average cantaloupe. Yeah, that's right, a big, fat, round thing, and they were gray, see? And the corners were all worn out and bent up. They had wings on them and everything else. See? And we'd sit there, we'd deal them out. See? We'd get absolutely in dead silence. We'd crouch over this round table that was in the basement of Bolis's house. We always played in Bolis's basement. And Bolis, obviously Bolis was Polish. And it was then I began to realize that the Poles, at least the ones I knew, lived most of their life in the basement. As a matter of fact, somebody asked me a terrible Polish joke the other day. So what's a Polish condominium? Somebody said that the answer is a basement. Well, nevertheless, we lived most of our life in a basement. His mother, who spoke no English at all, and of course at that time I spoke about 2/3 of my language consisted of a smattering of English, a smattering of Hungarian, because my other buddy was Gazanemet,
And a lot of Polish, because Bolis Rakowski, there's no way to talk to Bolis's mother, anybody else around his house, unless you could speak Polish. So, and I never thought in terms of it being bilingual or trilingual or anything else. We just, when you're with gays and Nemeth, you holler stuff like Tashi, Kenem Tudem, Tabala Vajal. Well, that's Hungarian. And she'd come screaming down the stairs. I remember one time she chased me out around the garage. One thing about Hungarian mothers, they're all a direct offshoot of Anna Magnani. And that's great. Talk about lusty ladies. Wow. So nevertheless, I'm sitting in the basement with Bolis on this Saturday night, and me and Bolis and Flick, and we're playing pinochle. When we played pinochle, it was a serious proposition. Very serious. For one thing, pinochle apparently and Germans and Poles go together. That when you're playing pinochle with somebody who's Polish, pinochle is like the national game. And he would remember tricks, plays that had been made like 9 months before, in games long since forgotten, and he would get mad all over again about it. And Bolis would say, "You're stupid!" And Flick would say, "What do you mean, stupid?" He's just stupid like the time you played that jack. You remember the time you played the jack on my queen? And trump my queen. What do you mean, you're stupid? You're doing it again. Flick said, "When did I do that? Don't you remember that last July you did that?" Well, there was no question we had done it, you see, so it was a very serious thing. And we'd sit there and dealing out the cards, and it was hot and steamy down there, and you could smell the stuffed cabbage, the kubasi. You could smell, the Polish cooking, incidentally, is a fantastic aphrodisiac. I mean, it is a fact. And there was this chick used to come over there all the time. She was Polish, Josephine Kubelik. And I remember Josephine Kubelik would come down the stairs, and I will tell you, you'd feel the cards in her hands start getting sweaty. And she would just come down the stairs there, and she was always selling tickets to a raffle at the All Saints School. And Josephine Kubelik would come down there. The Bolis had a thing on Josephine. Well, Bolis, the entire sophomore class had a thing on Josephine Kubelik, one way or another. But Josephine Kubelik would come down there. We're playing cards this night. This was the night before the incident about which I shouldn't tell you this. Occurred. We're playing. Now, that's innocent, right? Playing pinochle, right? Okay. The fact that we were three big guys for our age is significant to the story I'm about to tell. We were also three gnarled types, because all three of us were involved in playing football constantly, and so we had patches all over us, and we had Band-Aids and stuff over our eyes, and we're playing pinochle on this night. It was a hot, sweaty night. Down in the basement next to the stove. They had this great big furnace. And have you ever seen Polish blue? Well, almost everything that Polish people have in their houses are painted a curious kind of egg, almost robin's egg colored blue. But it isn't exactly robin's egg. I can't describe it any more than I know that I can see. I recognize it the instant I see it. I know that that's Polish blue. And they paint woodwork around their houses this color. So the Bolis's mother, or somebody, his brother Stash, had painted the furnace downstairs this blue color, and it was in the dark. You see this gigantic blue furnace with these enormous arms sticking out. The pipes that went up into it looked like an enormous blue octopus turned upside down, sitting in the corner. So we're sitting there playing pinochle this night. See, Josephine Kubelik came down, and she was talking to Mrs. Rakowski in Polish about the raffle tickets that they were selling for the All Saints School. And I saw her out of the corner of my eye. And there's a certain period when a male is about 15 and 16, when almost every instant of his life, every waking and most of his sleeping instances of his life, are spent thinking about girls. Do you agree with this, Nick? That is known as the total sweaty period. Well, we're playing pinochle, see, and I am vaguely distracted because over in the left of my vision is Josephine Kubelik. Well, I see Flick looking over my shoulder, and he's dealing the cards, and he's even throwing a couple of them on the floor. We prided ourselves on being able to shuffle the cards where you take them half of them in your hand, you go, you deal them out real fast. And we got really good. Because a kid playing cards night and day and night and day. As a matter of fact, there were a couple of kids in our crowd that could easily have been the Bobby Fishers of the pinochle world. I'll never forget that. I got so good at playing pinochle. And you play instinctively when you're a kid. You don't think in terms of any kind of great ploys. You just know what's right. You play it. Well, I remember one Sunday beating my grandfather and my father and all my uncles at pinochle, cleaning them out. I mean, that's embarrassing for a kid to do this. But that's the way we were playing. We were sitting there playing this day. Playing pinochle. And Josephine Kubelik walks across the basement floor and goes up the steps. Mrs. Rakowski following her. Flick puts down his hand and says, "Boy, whew, what a dish." Bolis says nothing. See, he doesn't like us to recognize that Josephine is a dish because he's got a real serious thing on it. Oh, she's not so much. Actually, he's plotting, see. And so we sat there for about 5 minutes, and then Flick said, "Hey, what do you say we go into Chicago tomorrow? What do you say we hitchhike to Chicago tomorrow to go up and down and look at the radio shops?" See, all three of us were going to the period when we build radios and that kind of stuff, Says, "What do you say we go into Chicago tomorrow?" They had all these radio shops on South State Street. Crummy little joints where you buy, surplus crystals and used turntables. And they had all kinds of old speakers and stuff. Like Van Cortlandt Street here in New York, see? So Bolis says, "Yeah, let's go in." I said, "Okay." Now, I might point out, even at that age, people rarely say what they think. The three of us had one thing on our minds, not radio parts, but Josephine Kubelik. And somehow, going to Chicago, south side of Chicago, hitchhiking, was a kind of erotic thing. It was exciting to go in there. And so the next day, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we are hitchhiking to Chicago. I would like to have $1 for every mile I hitchhiked. I have hitchhiked in my... Have you ever done any serious hitchhiking, Nick? Well, I'll tell you, it's an exciting thing. Hitchhiking is a little bit like various other blood sports. You never know what you're going to hook onto. It's exciting. And it's continually exciting. Sometimes you draw a blank, Other times, 8 cars stop like all at once. You get in and you're with this fantastic chick, ready to drive you to Mexico if you want to go, see? Never know what you hit. So we hitchhike into Chicago. We're getting all our rides, and finally we arrive up on the south side, up on South State Street. See, we're walking along, all three of us. We go into these places like the Ace Surplus Radio Parts Corporation, which was operated by a short, fat guy named Mac. Never had a last name. He was stubble all over. And there was all these grubby radio parts piled right up to the seating. And there were thousands of radio cuckoos that would come in there, and they're all sort of pale, pasty-faced, pimply-faced guys, and walking around in this place. Me and Schwartz, Flick, and Bolis were walking around in this place, and we go back out again, and the wind is blowing. Of course, we're just sort of not really interested in looking at radio parts, that there was something else going. Well, we walked about a block along South State Street, and there, right in the middle of this rotten, crummy neighborhood, if you don't know anything about that part of Chicago, there are all these little junk shops and stuff, was a marquee that said, the Rialto. Continuous shows. 12 o'clock to midnight. We walked past the Rialto, and there were thousands of pictures of these bimbos. You seen them, these chicks and these color pictures inside continuous shows. Lesbia Latour and her boom boom devil dance. And so we walked past it once. We see these guys skulking into this joint, see? Well, we got halfway down the block, and somebody had to finally say it. It was Flick. He said, "Hey," "how'd you go? Why don't we go to the show? Let's go down to the show." Bolis says, "Okay." I said, "What show?" Flick says, "What do you mean, what show? That Lesbia Latour there and her devil boom boom dance." was only $1.25. Well, we each had about $1.50 in our pockets, see, so we turned around, we walked back there, and it had a sign of it. It says, "You must be 21. Well, I mean, when you're a born and bred tackle, you could pass for 21 anything. And Bolis could have passed for 107. He could have passed for Mount McKinley, you know. So we laid down our $1.25, and we walk in through this. The guy takes our tickets, a little short guy, and they wear hats in these places. You know, you got to understand, they never take their hats off because they never know any minute they might be busted, you know, and they don't want to lose their hat. So the guy taking the tickets is wearing a hat. See, so we walk past, he tears our tickets in half, and we go inside. It's a real dark place, but they have no seats. Have you ever been in a real rotten, crummy, stinking burlesque house? They don't have seats, see, because they don't want the guys to spend there all day just sitting there sleeping in the seats. You stand up when you watch the show. So we're all standing up on this slanting floor, and up on the stage, they had this little stage, and the purple and green lights is this chick, see, and she's got these long, trailing, fuchsia-colored, like feather things, see. And she's waving them around. And I want to tell you, she made Josephine Kubelik look like a Girl Scout brownie. She was something else, you know, couldn't believe it. And there's 2 or 3 guys sitting down below. One guy's got these tom-toms. He's going, and she's moving up and down, and she's climbing up and down the scenery. Have you ever seen that act where they climb up and down the scenery? Oh, I'll tell you. And I never saw, you know, as being a guy at that time was interested in physical culture, you see, because I was playing football. I saw an act of physical dexterity which I would not believe to this day. There were certain parts of an anatomy to which she had attached propellers, like little feather fringe things. And she could move them. She had these propellers going, see, without seemingly moving a muscle. And what was even more amazing, she could move them in opposite directions. And she could stop them and reverse the directions and just go backwards and forth. And then she turns around and she's got them attached, in the back. So she's got propellers going all over the place. Flick is yelling. I'll tell you, he was yelling and howling because, you know, the tom-tom started to go, and this guy was selling Mexican wallets with genuine Parisian art pictures. And we were wallowing in this thing when all of a sudden a lot of guys start running through the place, and the lights went on, and bam! The man in blue moved in. Well, I remember Bolis says, what do they want? And I heard 4 or 5 guys crawling on the floor saying, "Get down, kid, try to get out through the door, we're busted." Well, we're out on the sidewalk now, and they're putting us in the wagon. I've never told you this story. When a cop sees the 3 of us and says, "You guys are kids." And Bolis says, "Yeah." At that time, he's now got a very high voice, and he pretends like he's 10. And he says, "Listen, you guys, beat it. Get out of here. Beat it and don't come back." And they put the rest of the guys in the wagon, and away they went. Well, we hitchhiked back home, and I don't think any of us ever mentioned where we had spent an exciting afternoon. By the skin of our teeth. But I'll never forget Lesbian. She was incredible with those tassels. Fantastic action. This is WOR New York. We have Lester Smith in the news coming up.